How do you get people's attention then when it comes to that? How do you snap them out of that nihilism?
Well, fiction is a useful tool for it.
Did you stumble on the use of fiction, or did you
No.
always know by reading fiction
Yeah.
how powerful it could be?
I mean, science fiction in particular, like Heinlein said, the three modes of science fiction are what if only, and if this goes on. And, you have Orwell and you have Shelley, and, right from the earliest days of the genre when it was trying to figure out what it was about, you have writers who were trying to do something, explanatory, or to make a warning, or to inspire. And there's this story science fiction readers and writers sometimes tell themselves that science fiction is a predictive literature, which I think is just manifestly wrong. I think that science fiction writers, they're like Texas marksmen. They fire a shotgun into the side of a barn and then draw a target around the place where the pellets have hit, tell everyone what a great shot they were. Science fiction makes a lot of predictions, and most of them don't come true. It would be amazing if you made that many predictions, if some of them didn't come true, though. But prediction's not a hugely interesting thing to be in the game of, because it implies that the future is unmalleable, that it's fixed. If you can predict the future, you can't change the future. And science fiction's greatest job and greatest trick over the years has been to influence the future, to inspire futures, or to warn people about futures. Gene Roddenberry didn't predict that Motorola's engineers would design flip phones that looked like Star Trek communicators. Right? That would be pretty boring. What's super exciting is he turned a whole generation of telecoms and hardware engineers into ravening Star Trek fans who wanted to do everything they could to build Star Trek communicators. That's way cooler than predicting it. Predicting is fortune telling, right? Inspiring is way more interesting.
Which is what he did.
Which is, what he did. And so, you can, the thing that fiction can do is it can provide a kind of emotional fly-through of technological change, or of a social change. So, writers aren't making accurate models of the world as they will be in the future. It's more like a diagnostic exercise. Like when you go to the doctor with a sore throat, she takes a swab off the back of it, she rubs it in a petri dish and leaves it for the weekend, and she comes and she looks at it under a microscope on Monday and can tell you something important about what's going on inside of you. But she isn't doing that because the petri dish reflects accurately how your body works. It's because it's inaccurate in a really useful way. One salient fact about your body is the whole world in the petri dish. And what a science fiction writer can do is pluck a single technology or social factor out of the world and spin up a world in a bottle where that one fact becomes the overwhelming fact. In the old days, writers like Harry Harrison used to write novels like Water World and Tech World and Spaceship World, where it's just like one thing would be there, right? So writers take this one thing, they expand it to take over the whole world, to give you a sense of what that world might feel like, to give you a way of interrogating how that technology or that social change might affect all the different pieces in your life. So imagine it was like 47, and the peace dividend was on us, the war was over, we don't have to spend money on bombing things or figuring out how to dig out rubble anymore, and we're trying to figure out what to do. And someone comes along and says, I have this amazing idea. We have these new TV cameras that we developed in the war, we have new screens and wireless technologies we developed in the war. We'll put a camera in every sitting room, in every corridor, in every corner. And we'll be like men as gods. We will see everything. No sin will go undetected and therefore unpunished. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says, God's eye is on the sparrow. Our eye will be on the sparrow. We will be divine in our ability to see all that happens in the world, right? At the time, all the arguments about why you would want to do that are pretty abstract. Like, it would feel creepy. I can't really tell you why, but that feels wrong to me. But then later in 47, a guy named Eric Blair, writing under his pen name George Orwell, publishes a book called 1984. And like a year after that, we could explain why that was wrong. We could say it would be Orwellian, right? He gave you the kind of blood and sinew in the argument that's missing when you're talking about it in the pure abstract. And that's an amazing thing to have done. It persisted all the way to the Blair years, where for some reason we decided that 1984 was a manual for statecraft. But up until then, it did a really good job of helping us discuss this. Yeah, I mean, the pilot episode of Yes Minister, or the second episode, season 1, episode 2, is called the Big Brother episode, and it's about a plan to build a database of all of the personally identifying information and potentially compromising facts of everyone in Britain, and how this minister can't possibly defend it because it'd be so ripe for abuse, and in the end the plan collapses, right? And so this was Yes Minister, right? This was like really early on. We were using Orwell to talk about how that technological change might happen. That's what we can do to get people to care. Or it's the thing I can do. It's the one thing I know how to do to get people to care.
Right. And so you saw that when you read a book like that. I guess it's because we understand narratives so well as humans, like those click in our brains. And so when he tells us this story and we imagine this world, all of a sudden, like you said, it's Orwellian. Whereas you could explain it ad nauseum without a story behind it, and we can't connect with it.
Without a person behind it. I mean, when you think about fiction, fiction's weird anyway because it's by definition it's inconsequential, right? Nothing that happens to fictional characters matter because they're not real people. So like the most tragic death in literature, Romeo and Juliet, was less tragic than the yogurt you ate with your breakfast because that was alive and now it's dead. And Romeo and Juliet were never alive and so they never died, right? And yet we have this like super limbic response when we read, like we cry, right? And we laugh and our heart pounds, this like autonomic response when we consume fiction. And it's a mystery when you think about it that way. And my theory about it is that the way we experience other people is by trying to model them in our minds, right? Like, if you ask yourself, what would my mom think of what I'm doing now? You're interrogating a kind of model that you built up of her. And this modeling happens continuously without any conscious intervention, very naively, right? If you go to school and someone says, have you met the new kid, she's weird, you've already got a stick figure with a sign hanging over it that says new kid and then parentheses weird. Even though you've never met the person might not even exist, right? We have models of people who are dead, we have models of people we'll never meet, and our subconscious builds that model when we're reading. And we experience empathy with other people through those models. When something bad happens to someone you love, if you get a phone call and your dad says, your cousin Fred fell down the stairs and broke his leg, the feeling you get of empathic sympathy for him is because you're imagining your model of Fred in pain. And you can see how much that hurts him, and so you can feel it too. Ironically, I think the same thing happens in reverse for writers. When you start writing, it's like you're doing a puppet show for yourself, like, hey kids, let's go on a quest, that sounds great, right? And as you work, I think that this model in the back of your mind, it's just building up this dossier on your characters because it doesn't know that you're making them up. All it knows is that there's information appearing in front of your eyes, the words you're typing, about these people. And so writers sometimes say this in a very precious way, like, I tried to make my characters go and, go this way, and they all wanted to go that way. What they mean is that they went from that easy flow of imagining what the characters would do and then having the fine details taken care of them for them by this modeling system in their mind, back to that very awkward thing of having to, in a very premeditated way, try and predict what their characters are going to do. So we give people empathy in stories for imaginary people who are in imaginary situations, but it helps them think about how they themselves might experience real ones.
Continue watching this fascinating conversation for free by clicking on the link below to visit our website, learn from the best minds in the world, and connect with a community of passionate people building the best versions of themselves. Just click on the link below, and I'll see you on the inside.